Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, episode 532, The Test. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters, and today, have Squeaks with me. So, today I will continue with cultivating friendship and organized meditation. Here, I look at some common ways to cultivate friendship. Then, I look at organized meditation, how to get the most out of your to-do list. Then, it's on to the test. Here, I look at the possibility that we are taking some sort of spiritual test with our life, and the test covers our whole life. Also, I'll talk about the imaginary territories, cruelty and prejudice, and fake news. Today's show will feature background footage from Bear Wallow Mountain. Bear Wallow Mountain is in Girton, North Carolina. To get there from Girton, take Bear Wallow Mountain Road off of Highway 74A. Well, the road turns to dirt, but then it becomes paved again at the top of the hill. When the road turns paved again at the crest of the hill, park, and the trail is off to the left, going up to the top of Bear Wallow Mountain, where there's a fire tower and a cow pasture and beautiful views. So now, let's continue with cultivating friendship and organized meditation. What I'm talking about that is there's like one organized meditation for the day, but perhaps there's another one for when you get ready to depart. When you're leaving for town, you got to make sure you have your jacket, car keys, etc. And there's another organized meditation for perhaps when you're going to bed and you might have to feed the animals and lock the doors, reset the thermostat to a lower setting, or whatever. You just continue on. So you have your organized meditation for going to bed. So there's various things, various times you might do it. There might be one for getting ready for work or school. That might be very critical. And perhaps organized meditation even at work, just to make sure you do critical things you need to do on the job. So it goes on and on. You can see where I'm going with this, and it could get really complicated. Perhaps a little bit, this might seem a little obsessive, perhaps like obsessive compulsive disorder. You don't want to go nuts with this. I'm just saying use it where you need it. Or perhaps if you're a little too obsessive and compulsive and you feel you do everything great anyway and you're tired of reviewing lists of things to do endlessly, well, perhaps you're ready to go the other way, from organized meditation into unorganized meditation. Perhaps you're tired of writing lists all the time of things to do, or remembering lists of things to do at work, or whatever, and you don't need them anymore. That's the point, you don't need them. You get so good, you could jump off. You don't need organized meditation. Your concentration and thinking ability is just fine. And you don't need it. well, then you don't need it. So you go from organized meditation to unorganized meditation. Well, everyone's different, and everyone thinks different ways. But might be another way this plays out. It might be a little more involved to it than just doing activities like I've been describing, and whether you remember to do them or forget. Well, as I said, if you are forgetful and you don't have organized meditation, this might be a good tool to help you. But it might be a little more to it than just that. Well, what I'm getting at here, I guess I'm getting at long-term mental health and being able to think and remember things. Who knows? I'm just guessing. I have no qualifications in this field. Maybe it might help. Reduce chances of Alzheimer's or dementia or just mental decline, I guess is a better term. It might help you avoid mental decline or slow it down as you get older. Maybe, maybe not. What credentials do I have in medicine or brain health? None. So we'll just move on. We're done with that. And so we continue on. Can organized meditation help with things like education and studying? To tell you the truth, I'm not sure. I didn't really employ it in that sense, but perhaps it can. Maybe, maybe not. Perhaps it might be useful in organizing a research paper or something like that, and just remembering the general highlights, gathering information, formulating a thesis or hypothesis, and then proving that thesis or hypothesis with the information you gathered. Easier said than done, sure. At least for me, I struggled in school, and this is one of the big areas I struggled with. I remember back in 5th grade, or maybe it was 4th grade, the English teacher would say, write a paragraph on so-and-so. Just a few sentences. Of course, it must be organized and sound good and almost be like a mini thesis, or at least have good descriptive quality to it or whatever, somehow making sense and being worthwhile. But for me, it was a daunting task. I remember calling them nightmarish paragraphs. Sure, I guess I wrote it into the song, A Day in the Life by the Beatles. But whatever. Of course, I could do things like that with my autism. But moving along, having organized themes could help you. Maybe to a point with education and putting things together for research. And perhaps other things too. And, well, as I said before, it could probably help on the workplace. Perhaps with evaluating potential employees. A list of things to check. Sure. Appearance, demeanor, knowledge of the subject at hand. Other qualifications, and whatever other decisions might be involved in hiring. And this goes on for almost anything. I guess when you're a mechanic, making sure all the elements are there. Of course, it's not just the repair you did, it's the whole machine or engine or whatever it is. Are all systems functioning properly? Perhaps a final diagnosis, which once again might involve a list of key systems and so on and so on. So, what am I getting at? Well, you have all these lists in your mind. Sure, I guess I do. And it goes on and on, much more than that. There's a list of phone numbers, sure, that I have in my mind. At least a few of them, some of them even from the distant past. Do I remember my home phone number from the 1990s? Oh, yes, I do. Do I remember my home phone number from second grade? Oh, yes, I do. Where is it? It's not on a piece of paper. Well, maybe it is, but it's in my mind. And perhaps with all this organized meditation and similar phenomenon, it might have helped me remember all these details. Of course, doesn't always work that way with a lot of other things for me. For instance, I'm poor at remembering faces and names, and often I forget other details. So it's very up and down, it seems, where I'm good at remembering some things, but not others. And perhaps other people are like that too. Well, maybe organized meditation will help with this too. Perhaps helping me to remember people's names or what they said or whatever. Anyway, so I guess organized meditation can help in many ways in our lives. Now, it is time for the test. Well, here I look at the possibility that our whole life is some sort of test, some sort of spiritual test, where God will evaluate us. Also, I'll talk about fake news, prejudice and cruelty, and the imaginary territories. So, there are several things going on with this section. Meanwhile, we do have some high winds out there, so they might provide a little interference with the audio. Well, so might finches chirping on and off. Anyway. So, sometimes I guess I could kind of feel it, kind of sense it. This happens to me fairly often. I just feel like I'm being evaluated somehow. That my whole life is some sort of test or evaluation. And God is, well, going to evaluate me and determine what is best for my next existence. Well, we negotiate with God for our next existence after we die. At least in theory, we do. And this would happen in the brain room, as described on the Casey Waters Show. So, I guess we're talking about what leads up to all that. Our life, and how well we do in our life. Sure, God's watching us. So we have to watch what we do, what we say, even what we think. We have to have the right motivations. Sure we do. This is critical. Why? I guess I just feel it. My intuition suggests so. Sure, just like my intuition suggests that life is just some sort of test. You heard the notion that we might be living in some sort of simulation? Well, okay, sometimes I think that myself, and there is some evidence that points towards it. So, if we're living in a simulation, well, this test is probably one of the main reasons we are in a simulation. To be tested, to be evaluated. And that way, God can figure out what is best for us in our next existence. Or God will decide if we can go to heaven. Of course, there might not be a God, but there might be some sort of higher-ups that evaluate our existence. And if not, perhaps it's all kind of automatic. The better we do on the test, the better our next existence will be. Somehow, I feel it. Whether there's a God or no God, I still think the result is the same. In other words, the better we do on this life, the better we'll do on our next life. We'll have a better life next time if we do well with this life. So it comes down to this life, how you live it, your motivations, your attitudes, what you say and do, and so on and so on. So, there's a lot going on here. Sure there is. And you have to be careful. Well, you have to be careful of people trying to push you or pull you in the wrong directions. This is particularly true with fake news. Yeah, it's out there. Why? Because I experienced it myself. Admittedly, it's a little upsetting. Imagine this. Well, gee, couldn't have been more than 2 weeks ago. Well, today's December 29th, 2025. So maybe around the 14th or 19th of December, sometime back then, watching videos on YouTube. And then there's this video about an emergency session of both sections of Congress and how President Trump's cabinet is turning on him and getting ready to pull the 25th Amendment on him and kick him out of office. If that doesn't work, simultaneously, plans for rapid impeachment are being drawn up now in the Senate, in the House, in an emergency session. Gee, and then it's not just one video, which seems fairly authentic, but it's another video that's saying the same thing. I'm watching it just 20 minutes later. That also seems very credible. The next day I see a fake Rachel Maddow saying the same thing. It looked just like her, but her voice was slightly different. They're all saying Congress is having an emergency session to impeach Trump. Well, then you flip over to CNN. Not a mention of it. Why? Because it's fake news. It's clickbait. As they just put it out to get lots of views and to earn money. Sure. And I guess if there's several videos saying the same thing that seem very authentic, well, they could feed off of each other, perhaps even drawing in more views than they would have individually. So you got this fake news. Gee, admittedly, it's upsetting. Well, anyway, it's so, well, this is something fairly new. this fake news phenomenon, at least in my life. I mean, there's always comedy and parody and all of that, and being critical of the government. Well, I'm all for that. We need to make fun of the government. We need to have comedy and parody. Sure. But do we really need fake news? I don't think so. Anyway, so we have to watch out for it. We have to be on the guard for it and evaluate it. Evaluate what we listen to and watch. A lot of it is artificial intelligence, and a lot of it is entirely fake. We really need to have our guards up. Well, I guess this is all part of the test. Are you paying attention? You're still in class. You thought you're out of class. You thought school's over. You thought you graduated a long time ago. No. School continues. Your whole life is a school. The test continues. The test never ends. You're still taking the test. Sure. And how you deal with fake news is part of the test. So you have to know what is fake news. You have to be able to sense it and be able to verify news, like I did by watching CNN. Don't get caught up in fake news. Well, unfortunately, there's other things going on too. There's prejudice and cruelty. Yeah, pay attention here. They're on the test too. And if you're into it, well, you might get a D. You might not do too well. You gotta shake off that prejudice and get rid of it. Try to be less cruel, especially if the cruelty is arbitrary. There is no reason for arbitrary cruelty. Perhaps that's the worst kind of all. Wake up. Realize what you're doing. You might not think your cruelty is arbitrary, but in reality, it might be. Prejudice is kind of arbitrary too. Yeah, God probably doesn't like either one. We need to wake up. We need to wake up to replacement theory. Yeah, God probably frowns on that one too. You might be a Christian. You might be white. You might be worried about replacement theory. And you might be having a lot of prejudice towards people who aren't white. And perhaps being cruel to them. Why do you think God's going to be kind to you in your next existence? Well, maybe not. Try to be nicer to people. Try to accept your fate. White culture isn't everything. Other cultures have plenty to contribute, maybe even more than white culture. Keep an open mind. That's true. We really need to have an open mind. We have to be careful here. Anyway, so, in modern times, under the Trump administration, cruelty and prejudice seem to be on the rise, almost endorsed by the government. Nevertheless, if you endorse it yourself, you're going to do worse on the test. Our government is failing the test, so to speak. I don't think Trump would do too well on this test. I'm assuming he's failing, or perhaps a low D. This is not good, how Trump is running the country. It's not good to encourage cruelty and racism and prejudice. We need to work with immigrants, not against them. They pick our vegetables. They build our homes. A lot of them are skilled factory workers. More skilled than we are, perhaps. We just need to accept that and welcome them. Chances are, having them in society will benefit all of us. If they make more money, we make more money. A rising tide lifts all boats. So when they do better, we'll do better. When minimum wage goes up, everybody makes more money. Sure. Well, maybe not the employers of minimum wage workers. They might lose some money, but they'll make it back eventually. And it's really up to rising the minimum wage. If we raise the minimum wage, as I said, some companies that employ minimum wage workers won't do well, but think of all that extra money in the economy. Eventually, it will trickle up to everybody, perhaps even those who employ minimum wage workers. It will all come back. It will all help us. And the government will make more money in taxes. And big corporations will make more money. Why? Because there's more spending at the bottom. And the profits will trickle up. Remember, when poor people get money, they spend it. It instantly stimulates the economy. When rich people get money, well, it often just sits there, uninvested, just sitting there as cash, doing nothing for the economy. Doing nothing except to enrich the person who owns the cash. Other people don't benefit. But when poor people get cash, everybody benefits, because that cash just flies out of their hands and is spent almost immediately. You betcha. I remember it myself from when I was poor. Sure. So, there's other things going on. What about the imaginary territories? The imaginary territories have a role here too in the test.
Casey Waters Show. Producer, Casey Waters. Graphic editing, Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, caseywaters2@caseywaters.com.